My name is Dave Anderson. I'm a straight incorporated survivor from January 21st, 1978 to February of 1981. I'm here with Chrissy, that's also a straight survivor, and she went through the Cincinnati program, and I appreciate you taking the time and shooting the breeze with me here a little bit there, Chrissy.
Thank you very much.
What program, what building were you in Straight Incorporated?
I was in the Cincinnati Straight from 85 to 87.
Okay, so about 2 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, just in that building right now?
Yes.
Oh, what'd you think of the place when you got there?
I didn't know where I was. I felt like they had put me in prison because of all the girls, and they thought I was going to be a misbehavior. So they had guy staff in there too. And I think it was all a blur because I came from Dallas Airport and flew into Cincinnati and went straight to straight. I hadn't seen my parents in a few years, and they said we were going shopping. So who thinks of a place like that something like that exists? I didn't. I felt like it was in a TV show. It just did not seem real.
Real quick, like in a nutshell kind of thing, and we'll go deeper into other stuff, but I'm curious as to what one of your top 3 memories overall of the whole experience was.
The first time that I was brought into group, I completely freaked out. My anxiety, unlike anxiety I had ever known before or since, a panic of, oh my God, where am I? And how do I get out? And I started looking and trying to find out, how do you get out of this place? And then there's a memory of a boy and he used to find little sharp things on the floor, and he carved all over his face and his arms, and there was blood everywhere. And I've had to do EMDR therapy because of that incident. And then another one is when they stood me up in front of the whole group and told me that I was a whore and no good, never be loved. And this went on for about 45 minutes to an hour. And that's been a profound impact on who I've become.
I wanted to start, with just some of the big memories to just knock them out of the park for you, okay? And then we can just kind of go further.
Okay.
What did you think of the staff members? What did you? Oh, let me ask you this: when you went into Straight in Cincinnati and went shopping, how old were you at the time?
15.
Okay. All right. So, how old were the staff members when you got there?
I would say they were 17, 18, somewhere in their 20s. And
did you have a fix on them at all?
I don't remember, but I know I remember studying every single one of them to find out what made them tick so that I could, again, try to figure out how to get out of there. I wasn't going to run. I didn't know where I was. So I wasn't going to run, but I was going to try to smart my way out of it.
Yeah. Did you have an impression that the staff was going to make that difficult or consciously make it difficult, or?
See, that's where this is uncomfortable, but I need to get this out. That's where my situation is different than about 80% of the entire kids who were in straight. They
Okay.
were very kind to me and very, not very, but there was a couple of them that had it out for me and were very cruel. But they paraded me because I was a druggie before I went into straight. And so the staff
What
would,
do you mean by, if I may ask, that nomenclature of druggie kind of freaks me out. What do you mean by that?
I was 15 years old, and from the time I was 14 until 15, I had experimented with quite a few drugs. And
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
All right. I'm sorry. I was just curious.
that's where staff, the majority of staff, treated me with, I don't know how, they weren't as hard on me as they were the other kids, because they knew beyond a shadow of a fact that I met every criteria that you could to be a straight incorporated soldier. And I bought into that to get out of there as soon as I could, because they wanted to keep me in there. God, I'm just so blessed I never got set back or anything. But yeah, I just wanted to get out any way I could, and I couldn't do it with brute force.
I was in the same boat. I was only 14, and I'd never thrown a punch in my life
Same here.
until Straight Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What'd you think of the group, and and like when you went to the host homes, and the people you sat next to? How'd you get a feel? What'd you feel of that?
I was like, who are these freaks? And what the hell are they doing flapping their arms like chickens? And what the hell? I just could not compute where I was. I remember my first night there. It was horrible. And then I went home to my host family, and the way they behaved and talked, and I was blown away. It felt like an alien world. I just overwhelmed, panicked. The main feeling is panic. Is, oh my God, how am I going to get out of here? Just panic, panic.
Yeah. You said they behaved and talked differently. What do you mean?
They had their own codes. Like you could, like, they're just their own lingo and, their own codes. And I'm going blank on what they are because I've spent the good part of 30 years blocking it out.
Understand.
But I
Understand.
but I know that they were there. And then this motivating, I could not fathom what the hell motivating was, and
Right.
purpose of it was, and why everyone, there wasn't one kid saying no to this thing. They were all doing it, every single one of them. And they were white and pasty, pimply. They looked like zombies.
Well, why do you think that was?
I didn't know. There were no windows. It was a huge warehouse with 2 foggy skylights in there. And that's it. It was all cinder block and some type of huge sliding door that served as a wall. And there were about 200 kids in there. And I didn't know what foreign place I was on or in.
I was thinking about, talking about I think in certain books they call it the sacred language, in Robert Lifton's books and stuff like that, when he talks about, how brainwashing, or specifically how cults form, that there's always a sacred language.
Hmm.
You know, and you hit it nail on. Absolutely.
And you
I'm
had to
sorry.
learn it quick, because if you didn't,
Yeah.
you'd be pummeled.
Well, that kind of dovetails into what I wanted to know next. Was I know as well as you do that we had rules rep.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and that those rules kind of changed every day. Seem to be.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
They.
Um,
Mhm.
other than the rule threads, do you remember how those rules were? How you were informed of those rules? Other than rules rep, different from that.
My old comers would, we went over that when I first got there. The rules were done in the car to and from. The rules were done probably during breakfast until I got them down, because I was like, what in, what the hell? And it was, I feel like, forced down my throat, and then once I got it, then it was the chain of command. I had to memorize that.
Oh, I remember the chain of command. Yeah, I forgot about that until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Um, did you ever feel that the rules? I mean, of course, they were stated. You know, we talked about them. Yes, they were conveyed by our old comers. But earlier, you talked about a sense of panic, and my thought was dread. There was a sense of dread that happened later on, and that was because these rules, there was a strong implication, but they were never really set. Did you have that experience?
Well, staff had their favorites, the way I looked at it, because I observed everybody in there. I paid
Yeah,
meticulous attention to everybody, and they had their favorites, the ones that they didn't verbally or physically abuse on a daily basis.
yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. I saw a lot of that too. Um, I know a lot of survivors suffer survivor's guilt. I don't know if that's a proper term for it, but I know a lot of people feel that. And the way I feel about it is that you were trying to get out, I was trying to get up, everybody's trying to get out. It's like somebody yelled fire in the movie house, and it was strange. It was absolutely bizarre.
The consequences of not doing what they wanted for me outweighed their stupid little rules.
Yeah.
It was, if I didn't learn this, I couldn't take people screaming, spitting in my face, and the awful things that I was broken before I went in there, and they just seen
Okay.
how broken I was. They just made sure that those cracks and those breaks were there for life, just not for a period of time, for life. And that's what my that's what my parents don't realize. They figured it was just.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, and this may seem off the wall, but do you think at the time somehow somebody was justifying it between their own two ears? And if they were justifying it, how you figure they do that?
Were my parents justifying it?
No, no, no. Inside the building,
um,
how do you think that they justified that?
because I was a druggie. I was a druggie, and that made a difference. The way I didn't know that at the time, but in my opinion, there was a couple other boys who had done a lot of drugs before straight, and We were
Okay.
kind of the favorites, you know, the puppies, and I was not treated as bad as some of these other kids because I was losing my life to drugs before I went in there.
Okay.
And
You,
that's
you're not the first person. You're not the first person that I've talked to. And over the years, I've talked to hundreds. And there's a huge percentage of people who really did have issues going on with chemical issues, outside chemical issues going on. Whereas I know just as many, if not more, that never touched a drug or a drop of alcohol in their life.
agreed.
But
Agreed. And
from a hardcore, or I don't think you were hardcore, but I know there were real hardcore individuals there, to somebody that saw somebody smoking pot,
mhm.
treated the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you see
Yeah.
that?
Yes. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes, we were being molded to be soldiers. Each one of us, one and the same, they could control us. And that's how I saw it, is each one of us were
Yeah.
a cookie cutout of little straight soldiers, you know, and that's, at least in my building, that's what was the goal. But I was also right before they closed down. So I don't know also if that had to deal with it, because there was already a lawsuit or two against the Cincinnati building.
Do you remember what those lawsuits were about?
Abuse, and one was one was a boy. I know he got physically abused and was restrained on the floor for a long time, and I think that messed something up. And the other one I don't remember. I was on staff, so I found out about this stuff when I was on staff, and I didn't want to know. They didn't tell me the details because I got fired from staff because I found out I didn't have to be a cookie cutter anymore. And it felt real damn good. And they fired me. And that was my,
What do you mean? What do you mean you didn't have to be a cookie cutter? What do you mean?
I didn't have to compete to be the same or to continue to reach these levels that everybody wanted to reach. I don't care about the levels, but some of them really, really did. And that's where it felt free. And then right after that, I think a week after, me and another staff member went to downtown Cincinnati and just took the day off. And we both got fired at the same time. So we were good soldiers, and he was a druggie too before he went into straight. We were good foot soldiers until we were given a little bit of freedom and snapped back into reality. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Perfectly, yeah. Because it's like the fruit is at its ripest when it falls from the tree, right?
Right.
And you fell from the tree.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a broad question, and I'm going to let you run with it, okay? I'm thinking, what was, like, say, from day one, first seat, front row, to that moment when you got yourself up and fired from staff? Can you summarize what your daily life was like? What was happening? I mean, how did that work out?
That's when it started to crumble, actually, for me. That's when when I got fired off of staff, my life took a very bad turn. And I didn't know, I was institutionalized. I did not know how to function outside of that society because I had kissed ass and bought in to some of this stuff. But when I got that taste of breath of fresh air, you could say, I remembered I have thought, I have an opinion, and I am a person. And I got that back, but I lost my ability to cope. For me, that's two very different things, if that makes sense. I stopped
Okay.
growing when I went into straight. My
Mm-hmm.
mind just stopped growing, you know?
That part I've heard, and experienced myself. I'm fascinated with the other part of the story that that you knew differently somehow.
Mm.
We talked about a sense of panic, and I did drop the word dread. Was that a familiar experience with you too?
Yes, because I kept thinking about my future and what, it was I guess premonition was right. I couldn't see a future. And that dread every morning, just, there was nothing to look forward to. There was nothing to have hope for, it was dread. Just, why? Why is this purposeful? Why? I just,
Yeah.
it, it made no sense. It was not logical.
Um, did you ever have a sense of, other than, I always knew it was Friday nights. I always knew it was Monday nights. Between Monday and Friday, I could never really tell you what day it was. Did you have something similar to that?
Um, you mean like the disassociation and the memories? I have blocked
No,
out.
no. Well, more so the sense of time. Could you tell what time it was? What
Oh,
what week
no,
it was?
no. Without the two headlights or two skylights in the ceiling, I would have not known if it was day or night. Just because of those skylights, I at least know when it's daytime versus nighttime. And that was it. You didn't know the season, or, I mean, that was the car ride to and from was what I saw, and those two skylights for 2 years. And even then, I would sometimes think, I wonder if it's dinner time, or I wonder, what hour of class I would be in. I didn't go to school for 2 years. So I think
Yeah.
about that. It just, it all ran together. And that's where, again, that goes back to no hope, no future, no no direction except for these levels.
Right. Did you have a clear sense of how to go about achieving these levels?
You listen to what they beat in your head day in and day out. You just memorize that stuff, listen to it, and just give them what they want. That's how I got it. I was a kiss ass. That's how I got out of straight. Because
Sure.
I ass. I tried to find
Hmm.
the person I could attach to be nice to me, and hopefully make the other ones not be so unnice. um, I regret that. And the misbehaviors are my heroes because I can't remember this one boy's name, but he always ran. And I would root for him in my head. I respect them because I wanted to do that, but I felt like I belonged in there, and I didn't feel like I had a right to do that because I belonged in there. And
Mhm.
that's what really screws me up, really in my head, puts a lot of guilt on my shoulders for that. for my fellow brothers and sisters, because I've seen
Oh.
and witnessed some bad things.
Were your parents aware at the time of what was going on inside the building?
I had out of town parents, and so I think I saw until I got off of first phase. I didn't see my parents until I made it home, and then after that, I think I saw them twice a month. And I felt very disconnected from them. I tried to convey some things that were happening, and they thought I was lying. And, again, she's a druggie and she just doesn't want to work the program. And so I just quit telling them and I just bought into the program. My mom paraded me around like a trophy because I was getting through straight, what we thought pretty fast, but it wasn't.
2 years is 2 years.
Right.
2 years is 2 years.
During my formative years,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because our brains, I was only 14 and, I experienced similar things, if not the same thing, and my poor little brain, hadn't even split into separate hemispheres yet.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's, I've had brain work done. I'm getting ready to have some tests about that to see how the PTSD has altered my brain, just so that, it's good to know. And I'm in professional help. It's good for them to know. And because this PTSD has rewired, like I said, those were my formative years. And that's what I learned is not how life is. And part of that is not my fault. I'm not saying I take responsibility for the choices I've made in life, which are not all positive, but I feel like I was raised this way. When I was in that transition from adolescent to young adult, nobody taught me anything. I wasn't in school. The only peers that I knew were other phasers. I did not know how to function outside of straight society. I don't know. I regret that. And I regret that, but I feel like it's involuntary that I didn't set out to be like this from straight. Well, the 15 years right out of straight, I kept trying to tell my mom and dad it was wrong. But then they would throw in my face how much money they spent and how much time they spent. And I failed straight. I failed them. And that just isn't the case. This is what I learned. I got PTSD from trying to survive. And people don't understand that. I was growing, my brain was growing, and the connections that I made at 15, 16, 17, 18, being on staff, those years cemented what I thought was right. And it's all wrong. At first, 20 years ago, I could not accept that. I don't know how to put this. I had been told straight was so wonderful for so long. We're talking years after I got out, that when I found out there were survivors, I was mad because I was like, what took you guys so long? Because I knew straight was wrong, but I lived in Indiana and I wasn't anywhere near Cincinnati. And I never not saw another straight lane again when I went back to Indiana. So all I could listen to was my family. And when I got found, I was panicked again. I was sucked right back to day one, front row, front seat. And I couldn't cope with it. I disappeared for a few months right after I was found because, whoa, whoa, it was what I needed, but I didn't know how to handle it.
Let me ask you this because I think it's real important. You said a couple of times that you were found, and the reason I'm asking is because I was just looking up a friend of mine. Google had just come out, and that's how I slowly woke up. But you said you were found. What do you mean?
Um, an old host sister of mine found me on Facebook, and I was blown away. It was like a balloon popping. She had just popped the balloon, and everything came. She's told me there's lots of us who straight damaged, and I was like, no, this can't be true. And it just, it was a balloon popping, and everything came rushing back at the same time. I had was striving to forget straight, to move on, to let it go, and it wasn't working. But at that point, that's where I was, still in denial. And then when she came, I could not deny the abuse that happened there anymore. And then my memories started coming back. Some things I do remember that I didn't remember 20 years ago, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I tell you why. When we spoke earlier, I made mention of a gal that we used the word groomed, and I think we alluded to that a minute ago. In real similar experiences, between the two of you, it's just.
It is
I'm
embarrassing.
sorry?
It's embarrassing to look at a survivor who was 12 years old or 13 years old, and they were just looking for attention at home, and their parents are assholes, and it was easier to deal with them by putting them in straight. That was one of my situations. Instead of sitting down and helping to heal the child, hell, can we pay somebody and deal with them? And the kids, oh my God, it broke my heart. And there was a 12-year-old, no, she was 11-year-old girl when I was in there. And her biggest thing that she regretted was not being good enough to pick the carpet and get it clean. The dad would not let her vacuum. She had to pick everything up by hand. And I was like, this girl is not she's being abused at home, and nobody's listening to her. And it blows me away. It blows me away to still think about it, because I know there's got to be another little girl somewhere in the same shoes as that little girl was. And
I'm afraid you're right.
Yeah, and that breaks my heart, that you hope parents would be smarter. But the sad part of it is a lot of parents don't want to parent. And as I said, it is easier to put them away than to have to deal with the real problem. Or maybe just the fact that they're in their way. And it's easier to pay somebody to take care of said child without you knowing the details of said child. My parents signed over custody of me to Straight Inc., not an individual, not a person, but to the building. That's who my custodian person was. And it's just insane. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
No, I don't think you're sidetracked at all. I think there is a point when we begin to spew, and that's absolutely what's happening. And because there's so many memories, attitudes, and then recognizing, oh my God, I'm doing them right now. I do it today. It's quite a bit. Um, I was going to ask you another question, uh, but you hold off and answered it before.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
you are one step ahead of the game.
Nice. Nice.
Because, I mean, like myself, I hear you saying that you were profoundly affected. I've tried to tell that story to my family for years. To no
I
avail. To no avail.
mhm.
I might be being heard now, but not for a long time. Um, and that is a frustrating thing. I've read stories where their parents apologized. Mine didn't.
I've I got an apology, but within the context of the letter, the narrative was not a positive one, if that makes sense. The narrative of the letter where the apology was made was not sincere, in my opinion, knowing what I know.
There
My
was never a verbal,
no, never, never, never. And I had tried to
never a
commit
verbal,
suicide.
I'm sorry.
No, never. I quit talking to my parents because the ultimate embarrassment to them was the fact I almost killed myself in 2001. And I had already shamed straight. Now I had shamed them. And so I don't talk to my parents. I haven't talked to my brother and sister in 20 years. Um, I am just an embarrassment, the disappointment. As my mother told me not too long ago, I am their failure. And at least I got that. But, it's not nice to hear that you are your parents' failure because of the thousands of dollars that they threw at somebody to raise me. Nobody taught me how to balance a check. Nobody taught me what to look for in a lease. Nobody taught me these things. I was put in straight. And then because I was an out of town kid, I never had that family support. Never. And I wish my parents knew nobody taught me this stuff. I was in straight, then I was out of straight, and I did not know what to do because I didn't know anything but straight.
Yeah. I was talking with people this morning, and straight had my head so filled with, you will achieve greatness, blah, blah, blah. You're going to change the world, blah, blah, blah. Fact was, I couldn't change a car tire.
Right, right, right. I I couldn't tie my shoes right. I mean, that's where I say developmentally I'm stunted because when you're supposed to learn these things, I was a soldier for straight. And that's not what a growing, forming mind who's already been abused before straight needed. Because, there were cracks, but straight cemented it. Tried to cement it shut, and it was not normal. That's just all I can say. It's not normal what they did to me. And even
Not normal
though,
at all.
no,
It was a typical day, but it wasn't normal
right,
for me.
amen. Right. Same here.
You know,
That's where it all blends to me. Every day was the same. You know, there are certain things
mm,
I think about, all the faces are blurred out because it was the same every day.
mhm,
You know, the
yeah,
food, the rhetoric, all the same. Medline, all that the same every day.
yeah. Hmm. I I remember we didn't call them misbehaviors back in my during my stint. We were called jerks,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, flat out jerks. And I have a good friend of mine, and we were uh, roommates, you know, or dorm or whatever. Yeah, housemates, I guess. We lived in had the same old comers, and we ended up being roommates afterwards. But I remember one day he developed this trick, and what he would do is go, "Guys, medication." Yeah, and 30% of the group would stand up and start walking towards the back.
Oh my gosh.
It
Oh,
was
I would have died
hysterical.
on the inside.
And
That
he
is,
got he got called on one time to you know to share verbatim, word for word. All he said were the words to Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. The entire
oh
group was
my,
just like stunned, stunned, and the staff did not know what to do. Just not know what to do.
oh
Uh,
my goodness.
you know, so there are moments.
Yeah, there was, see, I don't remember the good moments. I don't. I remember a
I
lot of
would
the,
call it a good moment, but it's,
oh, I know, I understand what you mean, but okay, we watched The Rose one night. That was a good memory, you know, but that's one night, you know, and we had
yeah.
to earn it. It wasn't given, we had to earn it. So, I mean, like I said, I don't have very many positive memories of straight. I,
Well, you know that as well as I do, there's other people that have or talk about having had a different experience in terms of, yeah, straight was all right.
just they were a very multi-dimensional cult. They would learn you, they would learn your family, and then they would find your weakness and exploit that to the hilt. And they did that with my family. My family is still in their cookie cutter parent mold. um, Straight, it was not temporary, is not temporary. This is now through me a multi-generational issue because I was put in a facility that conned my parents into believing I was going to be somebody I'm not. The brainwashing, the brainwashing was so intense. Like I said, until I was not supervised by anybody, where we went to Cincinnati that day and it felt free. I was scared to death we were going to get caught. Oh my gosh, I was scared to death somebody was going to see us and we were going to get caught.
What do you
You
mean
know,
you went to Cincinnati?
me and another staff member, we went to the same high school and we talked
Uh
about it at
huh.
school. We weren't going to show up one night and go to, or one day and go to Cincinnati, but we were going to tell them we were sick, you know, because they weren't
Oh,
going to check on our host parents. So we did that. And it was the most liberating thing that I remember. That was a good memory. That was a life-changing memory, is I did not have to be controlled anymore. And that's when my first start of lying happened to staff and why I got fired.
Okay. Well, let me ask the other side of that coin. There's people like you and me, survivors, that we would recognize as survivors, but they see the experience completely different.
I
And
know.
do you know what I'm talking about?
This is the first time I am ever talking about what really happened in my situation. This is the first time. There are a select few survivors who know how damaged I was prior to the program. Um, but not very many, because there are some strong opinions out there about staff members. And I drank I was only on trainee, so I drank the Kool-Aid until that Cincinnati day, and then I couldn't keep up the facade any longer. And yeah, yeah. Sorry, I got sidetracked again.
Yeah, I understand. You think if we had this same discussion, say, uh, a week after did you graduate, 7-step commence, or
Yeah, I did.
what did y'all call it back then?
I was the second group, I think, to stop calling it 7-stepping. See, again, they were being sued. So we were slowly transitioning to different things, and they started calling it graduate instead of 7-stepping. But I was so
But was it always
disappointed.
like a graduate society, or was it a
It,
commencement society, or 7-step or graduate society?
I think that when I graduated was about 6 months to a year before they closed. So, I mean, there wasn't really a society to have, because
Mm-hmm.
it got shut down. Now, people still met in AA and did stuff like that, but the society was gone once the building closed, as far as I know. And as for,
Yeah,
for
because
me. Mm-hmm.
they use those specific words when I graduated. You're a member of the graduate society.
Wow. Wow.
Kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of weird.
I was burned
Uh,
out. I couldn't be a 7-stepper. I remember that they had a gold charm that they gave everybody, and I wanted that freaking charm.
that was way after my time, but I know I've seen pictures of the charm you're talking about. You remember the statue,
Oh, yeah, another survivor that.
and then there was the real statue.
Yep, yep, in
Boy.
the foyer of the building. Hmm.
Yeah. I never saw the actual real statue, but they presented my father with one. And when he died, guess what I got?
Wow, wow,
Hmm.
that's crazy. Wow.
How do you figure? How do you figure your current perspective as of today compared to that 15-year-old girl? You know, a little messed up on the drugs, and with her perspective, how would those two perspectives, how would they be alike? How would they be different?
I was so afraid as a 15-year-old before I went in there, and then to this insane world they threw me in. I the only thing I emotion that other than sad and angry, oh my God, I hated my parents. Other than those feelings was of the despair of panic, if that makes sense. Because I remember being panicked the most in there, because you never knew what was going to happen. And I couldn't control it or foresee it. And so it panicked me. My adult self wants to look at my 15-year-old and say, it's safe. It's going to be okay. Um, that is an interesting question for where I'm at in my healing. Um, I would just try to let my 15-year-old know it's going to be okay and that she's only going to hurt
Yeah.
for a little bit and it will be over.
Yeah. I think one piece of assurance every straight parent should know, and like I said, I know a lot of survivors, and I know a lot of their kids, astounding children, remarkable children. You know, it's an amazing thing. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. Other
Yeah.
than the things that we talked about, can you think of any other ways that, I know it's hard, you don't know what you don't know, but can you think of any other ways that the whole gimmick influenced your life overall?
It damaged it. I mean, and I'm not saying that this, I know this is not the same for every survivor. But for me personally, for 15, 20 years, I couldn't escape it. I was, unbeknownst to me, trying to live that life out here, and I failed miserably. Then I had some personal things happen, and I lost my entire support system in 2012. And I feel like I'm having a reawakening after losing those 4 people. And in that process, I'm awakening to straight again in a healthier manner. And okay, remind me, where was I going? Remind me, Dave.
You were talking about how, now why do I have to remind you?
Oh, I had it.
You're talking about, you know,
Excuse me?
we were basically talking about, you know, how, you know, the program has
after
influenced your life. Yeah.
Well, it gave me complex post-traumatic stress disorder. At the age of 22 is when I started getting diagnosed with PTSD. And my oldest son, who I also had at 22, again, that multi-generational thing, I passed my PTSD on to him. I was just a few years out of 18 being done with straight. And like I said, it just spilled over. And until the deaths of those people, I wasn't faced with just me, where I had to figure out who I am, what happened to me, make peace with it, let go of the guilt, and accept who I am. Even though I made the choices in life, I was running from straight. I was drinking and drugging and running as far and as fast as I could away from that place. And it's not breaking me today, but it has broken me for a decade or better. And I'm ashamed of that, but it is what it is.
But you're very aware that you're not alone in feeling that, not the shame part. I'm not talking about that, but I mean in the straightness in you coming out on your child. You're not alone in that at all. You know, and it's not a biological process.
No.
This is strictly because of the way you were treated.
And it's awful because I remember treating my son like I would a phaser. I would get to a certain point and I would click, and I didn't know that I was clicking, and I would just treat him like a phaser. And it was so wrong, but it was the only thing I knew.
Yeah.
You know? It's amazing.
Well, Chrissy, you're in the last stretch of my questions, okay?
Okay.
and I got all the time in the world. But this is
Okay.
my last question, so you can take a deep breath. Is
Sorry. I did not know
it's okay.
I did not know that other parents had done that to their children. That's the first time I've
Oh
ever
yeah,
heard. The first time.
yes. I can name, or I can think of. I won't name them, but I can think of 3 people right now, and 1 female. Yeah, 3 males, 1 female, right off the top of my head. Um, and it's just a sad case of affairs, because I don't have children, so I kind of had a hunch that abusers abuse. I've always heard that. I don't know that it's true. I hope it's not. It seems to be,
It's true.
but
It's true.
I know the train stops here. So I didn't have children, but I've heard, if not from other survivors, I've heard from their spouses, and it's the unrealistic expectation demanding that an 18-month-old be honest. For instance,
Hmm.
you can't
Right.
even put 2 syllables together, and you want them to be honest. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, these unrealistic expectation enrages that people experience with their children. And like you said, this is how we were taught. If we perceive it's time to argue, we're well equipped to argue.
Most definitely.
And it's brutal when you think your crowning achievement is able to strip a tree at 50 feet with just your mouth alone. That
Hmm.
has tremendous impact on the child. Um,
Yes, it does.
what
Now,
I'm
I
curious
have,
about now. I'm sorry.
I
Go
have,
ahead.
I have a second son on the flip side of the PTSD who helps me. He's going through this therapy process with me to, I guess, manage my CPTSD. Um, and he is going to be going, we're keeping our fingers crossed, to Ball State, and is the most loving kid. And they're 9 years apart, but just, it's like I have it's just beautiful. I'm very blessed that I got to see both of my kids, at least the flip side
Sure.
of the what I created with the first one.
Yeah. My, I guess my final question is, I'm just curious why you were interested in jumping in with this little project with me.
I think that the time is right, and I have wasted, and I mean wasted, a ton of opportunities in my life. And this is blowing up. And this is the first time that I feel like maybe I can be heard in my little sector of the world and be validated that this happened, to my family and friends, that, this goes on in America. I've had a friend of mine say, "Oh, Chris, they don't do that here." Yes, they do. And I just want to be heard. And this feels like the right time. Thank you, Paris, because without her, I don't feel this movement would be happening.
She has certainly spearheaded something, but the shaft behind that spearhead, that's us.
Right, right.
That's us.
Agreed.
And hopefully this will have some impact as well, and I'm pretty sure it will.
I hope.
Um, do you have any, before I hit the stop
No,
record button?
I'm good.
I wanted to know one thing, and then I'm going to ask you a second thing. The one thing is if a parent is watching this right now, and Tommy, he's just a pain in the butt, I heard about this, that, or the other. And he stumbles across this. What would you tell that parent?
You've got to research it and check into it, because as soon as, and the most important thing to me is if they cut off contact with your child, that is the biggest red flag. You need to be in contact with that kid 24/7. If you call and say, I want to talk to Johnny, you better be able to talk to Johnny. If not that moment, then when they're done with a group, when it's an appropriate time. But you talk to that child every day. If not, what I went through is what they will go through, guaranteed.
How about, what would you say to a kid that's 19, 20 years old, just kind of getting dumped out of some facility, and they've been out for a week now? What would you say to that child?
Be very, very careful. And if you have support, lean on your support system. If you do not have a support system, get help. Because, like me, I tried to dismiss straight in my mind, and I was making horrible choices to run away from those memories. You can't run away from this. This you have to feel, and it hurts, but that's the only way to heal from this, the damage that was caused. And I would hope and pray that they would listen, and somehow, some way, whether through a friend, the family, the clergy, the school, get help, because you don't have to do this alone. You just don't. You're not alone now. There's a family of survivors.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. And I swear, this is the very last question. And I'm going to throw the ball to you. And I'm going to ask, is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you think you left out? Anything? I mean, we can always come back. I've got no problems with that.
Okay.
Make an addendum or something. But anything else you want to say before I hit that button?
If anybody has any questions, let me know. I'll answer them if I didn't cover it. But I feel a lot lighter in my chest after doing this. And I appreciate that immensely. And thank you for the opportunity.
All righty. I appreciate you talking with me, okay?
Okay. See you later.